hand over the session to the moderator, may I invite Dr. S. Balasubramaniam, author of this book, to come and say a few words.
Namaskaram. Coming to Chennai, sort of in one different way, it's coming home, coming to Tamil Nadu. Saying that, coming from a person who comes from Bangalore, I think in today's world, thankfully it's raining a lot, so I don't think there's a controversy in saying that. But that being said, I mean, it's a proud occasion for me, and it's very overwhelming to see so many people, like you all mentioned, on a Saturday evening. It also shows the kind of response this book and the subject has been having across the nation. So I want to thank first the moderator of this evening's occasion, Dr. Vaidya. In fact, in a conversation, we were just talking and he never even let me finish the conversation. He said, we are launching it in Madras. And after that, everything happened. So I have no role to play except land here in Chennai. And so I must thank you for creating such a wonderful opportunity for all of us to come together. I thank all the panelists. I know it's a Saturday evening, and Rajiv was telling me you work on Saturdays too. And it's so nice that you are there. And Madras Management Association is something which is known all over the country, not just in the state of Tamil Nadu. So having a book launch here itself is very satisfying. Swami Mitranandji and all the other friends here who all come here this evening. I see a lot of friends, a lot of relatives. It's also an occasion to meet some of my old classmates who come here too. So it's a great time to be here. But more importantly, this book, I thought I should speak a little bit about it and the journey towards getting this book written. In short, this book took me close to 2 years to write. Somebody was asking me, how many times did you rewrite? Writing time is okay, but how many times did you rewrite? And when you work for a man like the Prime Minister, it's obvious that you can't afford to make a mistake. Despite all that, there's a couple of typos in the book, this current print. We spotted it later, but subsequent prints have all been taken care of. You know, it took me 32 times to rewrite it. That's the effort it took. The reason I'm saying that is something for very, very specific reasons. Because if we live in a world of such extreme polarization, that if you write something which the bucks like, then the critics will hate you. If you write something which the critics like, then your world is finished. But the problem is both don't know the Prime Minister at all. That's my final conclusion. Because it's having had the privilege of watching him from close quarters, watching him function, having a lot of interviews with him, a lot of one-to-one discussions, I think he's a man yet to be fully understood by the nation. But there's one thing which I could say with all conviction. This book, whatever I have written, comes from a very responsible space of intellectual integrity. So I've taken the reason I wrote 32 times was I wanted to be conscious of the fact that I can't err on either side. I didn't write for an audience. I didn't write for somebody to pat me on the back and say, great work, great book. I didn't write to be preferred over for some position because I already have a position. I wrote because it's a story to be told to the whole world. And what is the story? The story is about India's contribution to leadership. And we can't lose sight of that. What our nation has achieved and what we hardly speak about is the enormous civilizational wisdom that a country is full of. You know, we also live in a time when we either romanticize everything Indian and therefore we discard it. We'll say we had an aeroplane 3,000 years ago, we had plastic surgery 5,000 years ago, and all that. We make it so very emotive that we forget that today's world demands evidence. Or we criticize everything India and Indian, that we discard it again. So finding the mid path, finding the point of equilibrium is what I have tried to do. I'm not trying to say the Western models of leadership are not good enough. Neither do I say that India's leadership is the only solution for the world. All I try to present is the wisdom of India, analyzed and using a case study, Prime Minister Modi, and I leave it to the reader to himself draw a conclusion how far advanced we are. It's up to you, and if you are nuanced enough in your understanding of what we are offering, if there's something 3,000, 4,000 years old, I bring in Western literature too. 50 pages of the book is my research notes. So for the academic minded, it's an academic book. For the practitioner, it is a practitioner toolkit. And for an Indic purist, it's as Indian as it can get. There's a very extensive glossary of terms that's under 30 pages of all the Sanskrit terms and the meanings that I've used in the book. So it's a I would say a journey of, I can't call it hard work, but definitely a journey of love and frustration to write, because I would get up at 3 in the morning to write. And I had a day job too. And working in Delhi on a day job means it's a whole day. And it was a great opportunity to write. But why did I start writing? The reason I started to think about this was 40 years ago I went into the forests of India. And I was deeply pained by the fact that the government had no idea of what governance was. I was pained by the fact that government didn't understand citizens. Government didn't understand tribal populations. So I come from an area where I started working, where there are 4 reservoirs, 4 dams built. And one of our early prime ministers called it the temples of modern India. I found them as the cause of the doom of modern India. The national park was declared, and all the tribals living in the forest were thrown out mercilessly. So I felt the state, in its wisdom, created the poverty in the first place, and then decided to fight the poverty in tribals. So it was very difficult for me to come to terms. As a young 22-year-old, I was angry. But for my conviction in the principles of Vivekananda and Mahatma Gandhi, possibly I would have taken to the gun myself. And I thought, something is wrong. Why can't these people sitting in Delhi understand that policy making starts with compassion? Policy making starts with understanding citizens. Policy making starts with listening to the voices of the masses. And since I couldn't get anybody to listen, I was only angry and frustrated. And in that frustration, wrote several books. This is my 9th book actually. So my earlier books are reasonably popular around the world, and they were actually calls of anguish. They were all calls of frustration. The book was I, the Citizen, and then I wrote a book called Voices from the Grassroots. But finally, the bottom line was I couldn't solve the problem. I found such extraordinary leadership in tribal chieftains. And was asking myself, if these people can exhibit such leadership, why aren't people in Bangalore and Delhi learning from them? But then, we live in a nation where if you are poor, we call you ignorant also. And we say, oh, what do these poor, ignorant people know? And we don't expect them to even understand all this. We think only a Harvard MBA can teach you how to explain all this. So, that led me to say, okay, let me go to Harvard itself and understand what do they know more than us. So, spent some time there. After a master's, I realized that was not able to answer the questions I had. But Harvard actually helped me ask the questions better, and which meant I started asking myself questions. Why did I even come here? What did I learn here? Or is there something missing back home that I have not understood properly? And so my journey of jumping into, it all started as watching a Tom and Jerry cartoon with my son, very young at that time. And it suddenly occurred to me, why are we giving him a packaged Western narrative of what a cat is and what a mouse is? And we have our own Jataka tales, we have our own Panchatantra. And beyond what the Amar Chitrakatha tells us, we don't go deeper than that. 3 pages, a child simply turns it, and then we read it. All of us have grown up on those things. The Chanda Mama comics, I don't even know if Chanda Mama comes now. It doesn't, right? It's all wound up with thing. But I grew up on that, but still it was not deep enough. Then I thought, let me understand this a little deeper. And then it went on to Munshi's works, Rajaji's works. Because I'm not a student of Sanskrit. And so I had to depend on other people's translation. Though I started learning a little bit of Sanskrit, I can't even say there are a lot of Sanskrit scholars in this audience. It's nowhere near that. So the glossary of terms is kindly done by a good friend and mentee, Dr. Anuradha, who worked very hard on putting it all together. So I was looking for what can we learn in our own backyard. And there's a very famous saying in Kannada, maybe there's one in Hindi too. In Kannada we say, Hittil Gida Maddalla. The little weed in our backyard will never be seen as our medicine at all. It has been somebody else's backyard, or somebody must put it in a capsule and give it to you, you'll believe it. And so that's what we all grew up in. And to me, then I thought, let me go deeper. And I was blessed and fortunate to have 2 gurus in my life. My Diksha guru was Swami Achalananji. And the privilege of knowing him for just 5 years also made me understand the scriptures from a particular angle. He was from Vivekachudamani to Atmabodha to all the scriptures that he could help teach me in those 5 years. I learned from him. And another guru, Swami Suresha, in the Ramakrishna order. I would call him my Vyavaharik Guru, because running an organization, I needed to know how to run it. And he would guide me in that. One of the two great Advaitins I have known. And in the course of a conversation, I started sharing these frustrations of discovering so much in Indian literature and scriptural wisdom, but unable to actually package it together. And more than 14, 15 years ago, Swami Sureshananda told me, I don't understand all this. You ask me to explain Maya to you, I'll try to do. But you ask me to explain leadership in the world of illusions, I don't know what it is. So it was a nice conversation, and in a moment of possibly wisdom or his own way of looking at it, he said, I know somebody as a young man came to the Ramakrishna order to become a monk, and we turned him away. Professor Kamput is here, so. And he is now the Chief Minister of Gujarat. Why don't you use your model that you're evolving to filter him and see whether he fits your model? So what started off trying to find a case study for the model I was describing. I thought he's sitting somewhere in Gujarat, I don't know him, I can't reach him. How can I even study him? It's illogical to expect me to use him as a case study. And so I did the next best thing. I already done the research, so I wrote another book called Leadership Lessons for Daily Living, where I wrote about what generally is seen as ordinary people, but who exhibit extraordinary leadership. It could be a street vendor in the footpath of Mysore to an auto driver I met in Mailadurai. And in all of my journeys across the country and the world, I met different kinds of people. So I wrote about them using the Indic references. But I didn't mention anything solid in that book, because it was just a more easy reading book. But then fate has got its own way of conspiring. And 3 years ago, when the Honorable Prime Minister invited me to join the Capacity Building Commission, which is setting up something very close to his heart, which he says which will revolutionize India and its preparedness to meet future challenges. Our job is to make civil servants stop thinking like a karmachari and behaving like a karmayogi. And something which was very deep in his vision. And he said, how do we go beyond the rule-based approach and get the people to understand they have a role to play in serving this country? How do you make a bureaucrats future ready? Now, these things were music to my ears, because that's what I was teaching at Cornell, and I thought, wow, I got a chance to do this. And more importantly, I had a chance to see him in action. So I took the courage and said, I should capture this. I have so much of research. Let me put it all together and say, will you allow me to go deep into his life? And he only made three directions for me. He said, the book is not about me. The book is about India's leadership. The world should understand our leadership models are far more ancient, far more stronger, far more deep-rooted than anything else. You can use me as a case study, but don't forget the fact that you're talking about India. Second, he said, after reading this book, 1,000 leaders for this country should emerge. Then your book is a success. Not by how many people read it or how many books were sold, but how many leaders this nation gets. And the fascinating part was, he said, it's about offering a way forward for all of us. You know, he doesn't have to pretend to be humble in people like me who work with him. In one conversation with the commission, he even said, you're building capacities of civil servants. You haven't given me my capacity building plan yet. So your job is also including me and telling me what I should improve on. So that is the kind of approach he has got. And he's a lifelong learner. And I was looking at how do you package him, how do you unpack him. And many one-to-one conversations, incidents which are not known to the outside world. Some incidents which are in the public domain, I have to use it for the context. Some incidents which are very unique. In fact, there's an incident with Chennai itself which I have not written. He had come to Chennai maybe a year or two ago, I don't remember when, because I didn't put it in my book, I didn't spend too much time dating it. He had come to Anna University for a convocation. And he recollected this incident and told me, I was just sitting there, because all of us, including me, I asked him this question, where do you get your energy from? Because all of us in Delhi know how long he works, everybody in India knows that. If he's on a flight to the US, he's working on the plane. He lands back half an hour later, he's in a meeting. So maybe the people who accompany him are jet lagged, but he's not. And the magic of his work is something that all of us aspire to imitate, but we can't do it. And so I asked him this question, and he told me this anecdote. So I went to Chennai, and I was told, my people who briefed me told me this is the university where the highest number of students graduate. That's what he told me. And he said, and I saw the hall hall was packed, but it didn't look like this, seemed like the highest number of students of a university. So at the same time, I was very cognizant that the Vice Chancellor shouldn't feel bad, but after some time I asked him, is this all the students of graduating today or are there more students? And the Vice Chancellor told me, yes sir, there are other halls. We have connected television sets to those halls and they're all watching from there. And the humility of the Prime Minister is he will never disrupt anything. Whether it's a presentation you make to him or a conversation you have with him, he's never disrespectful or disruptive. He listens to you very, very deeply. And he did the same thing. At the end of the session with the Vice Chancellor, he told him, can I go meet the other students? Can you all ask them to stay back? And he left the hall, much to the possible nervousness of the SPG. He simply went into the other rooms, and they were not stages like this. So they were just halls watching televisions. So you would sit on a chair, stand on a chair, stand on a table, started talking to young people. And the funny part was, he told me, when I do that, people think that I am trying to show off something or trying to impress somebody. I know that state will never elect me, so it's okay. So I went there because I get my energy from these young people. You asked me, where do I get my energy from? He said, it is these young people who give me energy. When they talk their aspirations, when they share their problems, because the only way I can get to sitting in Delhi, he was a pracharak, so he used to be roaming around the country, and that is a different connectedness. But the default of your position disconnects you from a lot of those realities by definition of the position itself. Though he is very well connected even today, you can pick up the phone and call any of his old pracharak friends in some village and say, how is it things happening there? And in my research, I also discovered some fascinating things. His principal secretary, Dr. P.K. Mishra, again an extraordinary bureaucrat of this country, who's been with him for close to 25 years. When he was the Chief Minister's principal secretary, he narrated two incidents to me, which I think I must share. I only quoted one of them in the book, one I am not. One incident he shared was when the Swaminarayan temple had a bomb attack. Even before the DGP of the state or the Chief Secretary of the state or the Principal Secretary, the Chief Minister got to know the bomb attack, the Chief Minister calls the three of them and says, I have heard there's a bomb attack in Swaminarayan temple. Rush people right now there. Within 3 minutes of the bomb attack. Now that is connectedness. Even today, across the country, you can get messages because he has still got people whom we can relate to on a one-to-one basis. The second incident he said was, he called the Principal Secretary one day and told him, just find out that in this particular part of Gujarat, I'm very happy that one civil servant in the Women and Child Department, he even works on Saturdays and Sundays. And in his own humorous way, he said, the problem is he's not working in the area where he's posted, he's working elsewhere. Sort of jokingly pointing out, this fellow is using government jeep and going to tourism. And he knows, but Dr. Mishra told me, I don't know how he got to know, but the fact is he knew and I verified, and that fellow was doing this regularly. So, information like this, too, extraordinary leadership. And that's what I kept. I don't want to tell you what is in the book because I want you to buy and read it. But this is something which is extraordinary because India has got so much to offer. This book is not just an academic exercise. This book is written for practitioners. This book is written for different kinds of people. A lot of people have endorsed it. And all of them tell me they read the book before writing the blurbs, whether it's Bill Gates or Anand Mahindra, N. Chandra. In fact, the next launch in Mumbai on August 16, Chandra himself is coming and launching it. And so a lot of these people who believe that this is a book for corporate leaders too, as much as it is for farmers to students to everybody. These principles are generic. I only use a case study of the Honorable PM. But more importantly, what I would like to tell you is, it completes what the world needs. We are living in a world where black swan events are the norm. They are not exceptions anymore. Our leadership, public leadership around the world has failed the world. Many times they are unable to manage the problems that are getting created. Half the time they may be creating the problems too. And we need leaders who are extraordinary. And my last chapter in the book is called The Dharma of Legacy and the Legacy of Dharma, where I explain and try to argue how the Indic model alone, based on the Purusharthas that we know of, is something which is possibly a solution for the whole world. And that's what India is trying to live. The Delhi Declaration which the Prime Minister made in the G20, or the 4 Ps. People, finally it's all about us, but we are not the only inhabitants of the earth. The planet matters too. We need profits. Vivekananda says you can't talk about Bhagavad Gita on an empty stomach. And so you need profits, but more importantly, you need peace. And this only public leaders of an extraordinary capability can enable for us. So this is sort of, in my opinion, I've tried to put together a lot of literature, synthesize as much as I could. I've actually sacrificed going deep into one concept because I had to bring in the wider concept of India into it. One of my colleagues told me, academic colleagues told me, he said every chapter is 4 or 5 PhDs hiding inside. And if the next generation takes it up, a lot of young people here, and go seriously into researching it, I think we can build the body of literature. And finally, all scriptures are interpretational. The Bhagavad Gita, if you read Ramanuja's Bhashyas, it's a different way of looking at it. Shankara will be a different way of looking at it. Madhvacharya is a different way of looking at it. The same Bhagavad Gita, each has a different perspective on it. Mine is also interpretational, but I use the lens of leadership. You don't have to agree with what I have said, but if you're disagreeing with it, you have better have a strong justification for it. And give us a good rationale which will be strong enough. I'm also open to learning. The subsequent editions will be definitely taking all inputs I'm getting from around the world. But more importantly, I want to conclude saying the great Vedic statement which Swami Vivekananda gave as the mission statement for the Ramakrishna order. He said, Atmano mokshartam jagat-hitayacha. I think if I could find somebody who's a living embodiment of it, personal evolution and personal spiritual journey, but it's not just for myself. The manifestation of this is Jagat Sita. Or the other way of looking at it, I create the Jagat Sita and therefore I evolve spiritually. And this is something which I have seen very strongly in the Honorable Prime Minister. And that is why I felt this is a story to be told. I thought I'll take the risk of being called a psychophant. I'll take the risk of being called whatever adjectives people use today. But I decided this book has to be written, the story has to be told. And it's only less than a month since its official launch. The publishers are very happy. They're happy because it's already a bestseller. And it's in the 4th reprint already. And they are impressed that 4th reprint within 4 weeks of printing is a big thing for them. It's also available in various formats. It's also available in the US and UK, US editions and UK editions. But my hope is not about, because the more sales that happens, this knowledge comes from community wisdom, scriptural wisdom of India. And therefore I felt it's appropriate that the proceeds of the book doesn't go to any individual. So all the proceeds coming from this book goes to PM Cares. And therefore again back to the citizens of India. And my hope is not the proceeds. My hope is not the number of sales. The real test of the whole thing would be people pick it up, people read it, people internalize it, and awaken the leader is hiding inside every one of us. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, let's give it up to him. The author is here and extraordinary. Thank you very much, sir. And since we missed Professor Kamakoti being there when we just have a launch of the book, if you could step forward. President MMA, my request to you. We don't want to miss Professor Kamakoti from the speaker. Thank you. All the dignitaries on the dais. Time for us to go on with the panel discussion. May I now invite Dr. S. Subramanian to take the panel discussion forward.
Scholar, author, and my good friend, Dr. Bala. A very distinguished set of panelists, Dr. Kamakoti, Mr. Rajiv Lochan, and Mr. Anand, Swami Nityanandaji. Again, a wonderful audience that only organizations like MMA can assemble together on a Saturday evening. A very good evening to all of you. It is my proud privilege to moderate this session, which I assured to Dr. Bala the moment I came to know of the work that he has done, that it definitely has to be done in Chennai with the organizational assistance of MMA, to which he readily agreed and gave me the complete freedom to organize this event. Thank you very much for that. But let me first begin with a confession statement. As an academic and an academic who teaches, we are used to giving homework to our students, and at times we also expect students not to complete their homework and come to class. So I stand before you as one such student today, because this is actually an extensive homework that we had to do to read the entire book and then come and have a panel discussion. But let me give the confession that I have not read this book entirely, but I will assure you I will definitely read it. But I have done some justice by going through the book, understanding the critical components of the book. So much to say that more than talking about the text of this book, I thought I will, as a background, give the context for this book, and that way that will be a good backdrop for this panel discussion. And the context will be two. One is a personal experience of Swami Vivekananda himself, about which the author spoke a lot during his introductory remarks. And the second is a research that was done in the early 2000s. When Swami Vivekananda went to Chicago to address the World Parliament of Religions, he went after he undertook a Bharat Yatra. In fact, he traveled the country from north to south and east to west. And those were the times where it was not an enriched India, it was an impoverished India. Certain parts you had famines, certain parts you had floods, but bottom line, the country was ravaged by both. And it was in that situation that he went in 1893 to Chicago to address the World Parliament of Religions, which was organized to also establish a different theocratic supremacy. But in that platform, it required the saintly statesmanship of a towering personality like Swami Vivekananda to address the audience, and with a thumping desk emphaticness, he told the audience that I come from a country that has the potential to lead the world. And the moment he made those opening remarks, especially sisters and brothers of America, the applause that he received, the duration of the applause was more than the duration of a short speech at that point of time. So it requires that amount of confidence in one's own nation to make such a statement, especially at a time when you have seen personally that the country was ruined by floods and famines all over. And let me fast forward to the research that the Indian Council for Research in International Economic Relations, ICRIA, in the early 2000s. They did a research to understand the civilizational propensities of nations. And an important finding was how the civilizational propensity of Bharat was so dominant, so much that the world's biggest temple was in Cambodia, that you had a remote village in Vietnam where people still speak Sanskrit. There was a central university in Indonesia that was called the Sandipani University, and the dominant presence of such civilizational symbols of India was present beyond the current boundaries of India not because India exercised its military power. It had tremendous soft civilizational assets that it could demonstrate to the entire world. And that proved a very simple theory that countries with soft civilizational assets can register such dominance in different geographies of the world. Now, why am I saying both of these instances? The book actually connects various leadership models that have primarily find its source in many of these civilizational assets, in whatever form it might be, predominantly in various scriptures that the author has very meticulously drafted some of the examples in multiple languages and used a careful term, which I think is the best way to actually capture the essence of this leadership, and he calls it the enlightened leadership. It is only an enlightened individual can have this level of leadership that the book continuously keeps citing with different examples that are deeply rooted to our Indic assets. And that's the reason why Swami Vivekananda's idea of India, and he did not stop with his 1893